All right, everyone, welcome back and thank you for checking out another episode. Today, I want to come at you with a quick lesson, but something that's of extreme importance and a topic that comes up in almost every single meeting that I have with businesses. What I want to discuss today is commercial umbrellas, right? And the importance that they're starting to play and how things have changed related to your commercial umbrella for your business insurance over the last few years. And so before we get into the main points I want to discuss, let's just high level talk about what your commercial umbrella does. Commercial umbrellas are designed, they are an excess liability policy that sits over top of three things. It sits over your general liability, it sits over your auto liability, and then your employer's liability, giving you an additional limit on top of whatever your underlying limits are at the time of any claim. So if you have $1 million general liability and $1 million auto liability policy, then you would, in the event of a claim, have whatever your umbrella limit is over top of that. So if you have $1 million umbrella, you'd have $2 million of coverage in either of those instances. When I first started in insurance, the stigma around commercial umbrellas was pretty simple. It was buy as much as you can get, because insurance companies were giving away commercial umbrellas. You were able to get, depending on the industry and your business and whatever other factors go into it, millions and millions of dollars of extra coverage for pennies on the dollar. And the reason being was that 10 years ago, no claims were getting into the umbrella. It used to just be a formality. Hey, you have to have this much to get on the job if you're working for a big company or a big GC. But now it has become more and more likely that umbrella limits are going to need to be used. So when I first started, it was get as much as you can get. If you have 3 now, why don't you have 5? It may only cost you $1,000. And for $1,000, is that worth it to have an extra $2 million of coverage? But we have very quickly changed the narrative, or the insurance industry has changed the narrative over the last 10 years to get what you need, because it is becoming so much more expensive to obtain higher commercial umbrella limits. Not only that, it's becoming more difficult. There aren't as many markets and as many carriers willing to offer high umbrella limits for businesses depending on what their risks are. And so now, if you're running a business and you're looking at your overall insurance program, and I hope that you're looking at it through the lens of, I'm buying my insurance to cover the things I cannot afford to pay out of pocket. I'm buying my insurance to cover the catastrophic losses. Well, that's exactly where your umbrella comes in. If you have a claim that's going to surpass your underlying limits of $1 million, and you're going to need to tap into that umbrella, that's exactly the reason you're buying your insurance. Unfortunately, it's just becoming a little bit less expensive to do that and a little bit more difficult. And so one of the questions businesses ask me every single time when we sit down and go through this part of their program is, okay, well then how much do I need? How much umbrella limit, what should my umbrella limit be? And it's a multi-million-dollar question, right? And it's one that there's no black and white formula to figure out. But there are a couple things to consider. Number one, just like all insurance, what will help you sleep better at night? At what amount of insurance are you going to be able to lay your head on the pillow and not have to worry about on your worst day whether or not you have the right amount of coverage? Number two, and this is very clear, this is a pretty good black and white scenario, how much do you have to do certain projects? If you do work for general contractors who say, hey, you need $5 million to even step on the job, well, then that's a good starting point. And depending on the work, does that make sense, or should you consider a little bit more? Okay. Number two, you've got to consider the cost. How much can you afford to have when it comes to your commercial umbrella? Right? So we're talking about what helps you sleep well at night, how much do you need, and then how much can you afford? And lastly, one other place we look at as kind of an indicator is, what is your business worth? And when we talk about the umbrella, we're talking about on your worst day in business, you have an employee blows a red light, hits a family, and there are multiple fatalities. What are they going to sue you for? And to figure that out, let's look at it from the opposite lens. If that was your family, what would you sue for? What is your business worth? And at that point, you can again continue to narrow that discussion down to an area where you're starting to figure out what makes sense. Number one, figure out what you can sleep well at night with and what you think the most somebody would come after your business for would be. And then back into the cost. But do not let cost be the main driver in making this decision, because it is such an important part of your coverage. It is the most coverage you're going to buy in any one policy. So keep that in mind. Like I mentioned, we have seen so many changes to the insurance industry, but more specifically to this line of coverage over the last 10 years because of how much more common it is. It used to be $1 million claims were unicorns. Now it's happening every other day. They're handing out multi-million-dollar lawsuits and payouts like they're candy. So make sure you're well protected. Make sure you've got an adequate umbrella limit and understand the changes that have been happening. So next time you sit down and review, you can take a good, educated look at what your umbrella limits are and what they should be. That's all for today. Be sure to like and subscribe and stay tuned for more content.